And welcome to our connection live. I'm your host, Joanna, and today is a very special episode because we're inviting the rare disease community to be part of the conversation. Our guest is Christine McCarvey from Pennsylvania State, the Pennsylvania State Ambassador for the National Organization for Rare Diseases, or NORD. As a member of the Undiagnosed Network Foundation peer group, someone who has spent years searching for answers for both herself and her daughter. Christine's story spans generations. Her mother, who lived with an undiagnosed condition, and after her passing, an autopsy revealed findings that answered at least part of the mystery. Today, Christine continues searching for answers for herself and her daughter, while helping countless other families navigate similar journeys. Before we begin, I'd like to make one thing clear. Today's conversation is not intended to provide medical advice. Instead, we are hoping to connect patients, caregivers, clinicians, researchers, genetic counselors, and advocacy organizations. If something Christine shares reminds you of a published study, a patient registry, a specialist, a research project, or another family with similar experiences, we'd love to hear from you in the chat or after the episode. Sometimes one connection can change everything. Christine, welcome to our connection.
Thank you for having me.
Let's start by getting to know you. Can you tell us a little about yourself and how you first became in rare disease advocacy?
Yeah, so I, as you had mentioned, I am the Pennsylvania State Ambassador for NORD. I am also a UDNF peer member. I myself have been living many years with a undiagnosed ultra rare disease, and I'm a mother of a child who has an undiagnosed disease as well. And I've been undiagnosed for over 15 years, and I have learned a lot of things through a lot of hardship and tears. And I finally felt like I got to this point where I was no longer drowning, but was treading water. And I knew that I wanted to help other people who were navigating this undiagnosed rare disease space. And that's when I started volunteering as an advocate.
So, what inspired you to become the Pennsylvania NORD Ambassador?
So I grew up in a household where we did a lot of service as a child. And, when I got sick, if that was one of the hardest things, was that I wanted to still, perform acts of service for others, but I really didn't know how I could do that within the limitations of my disease. And if anyone understands what it's like to have a rare or undiagnosed disease, it's both NORD and the Undiagnosed Diseases Network Foundation. So I'm really grateful that I get to give back to other people in a way that works around the limitations of my condition.
Let's see. What keeps you motivated?
So many things, but I think my biggest motivator is my daughter. As I mentioned, she also has a similar condition to me, who's undiagnosed. And it's very important that she sees her mother, even though she, uses IV fluids and oxygen for part of the day and has to catheterize herself. She sees me advocating for myself, for others, and, living the best life that I can with my condition.
You have an incredible scientific background. What inspired you to study biochemistry?
My dad actually, he was an analytical chemist. And I pretty much knew at age 3 that I wanted to be a scientist. And my dad and I were very close. Unfortunately, he passed away in 2012 from kind of an undiagnosed disease. He had unknown primary cancer. So it's a form of cancer that doesn't form a tumor and just metastasizes. And, when they discover it, the patients are terminal. But I had a very close relationship with my father, and I've always loved science. It's one of my passions. So.
Let's see. What was your what was your research focused on?
So I mainly looked at epigenetics, and I was looking at chromatin modifications, and how that could turn genes on for the development of cancer. So it was epigenetic research in cancer, basically.
Mm-hmm. Did you ever imagine the skills would one day help you navigate your own medical journey?
Um, no, but it's funny because I remember when I got sick and I had to leave. I was in a PhD program at the University of Pennsylvania School of Medicine. And I had just gotten an NIH grant for my thesis project, and I had a full fellowship. And I remember thinking when I had to leave, I was like, God, why did you make me so smart? And then, not be able to use it. And, here I
Mm-hmm.
am using it for myself, but also to help other people. That was another reason why I wanted to be an advocate, because not only am I a patient, but I'm a caregiver, and I also have this background medical knowledge, and I really felt like I could harness that for good.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes it could take a while to figure out what you're here for.
Yeah. Now I
Yeah.
know this is I'm
Yeah.
at the right place.
Yeah. So, has being a scientist changed the way you interact with the physicians?
Um, Definitely. I mean, I think I've always told people who have a rare disease, or my friends who are dealing with even a common disease, well-known disease like diabetes or whatever, and they're talking about various symptoms that they're having. I always say to them, like, no one's going to care more about your health than you.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have often done my own research looking at journal articles, and have brought that to my physician and have asked, can we try this medication? And in fact, I am on one of those medications that I found. And I had asked about the IV fluids for I faint as part of my disease, and that has been like life changing for me. I would not be able to physically be an advocate if I were not on my fluids. So.
Mm-hmm. I'd like to talk about your family story. Can you tell us about your mother, your mother's journey?
Yeah, so my mother was my caregiver for many years. And then one day she was here on a Friday. She did the groceries for me. And then that Monday, I got a phone call saying that from the hospital saying that she could no longer walk. And this was kind of shocking because, my mom was relatively healthy. She only had like high blood pressure, which a lot of older adults have. And that was pretty much it. So, she stayed in the hospital for about 2 weeks. They did a lot of diagnostic testing and really couldn't find any reason why she couldn't walk. And she had what is known as ataxia. So she was kind of staggering and eventually was
Mhm.
no longer able to even stagger. And even during that 2 weeks that she was in the hospital, I started to notice that she was starting to become ataxic, like in her arms. Like she was
Mhm.
like when she was eating food, she was like spilling it on herself. And then she was discharged to a rehab facility. We still had no idea why she couldn't walk. Um, and during there, she took another downturn, and she started to develop like rapidly progressive dementia.
Mhm.
And the only positive test result that really came back from her was that she had elevated protein in her cerebral spinal fluid. So
Mhm.
they did a lumbar puncture, and they didn't really know why. They thought maybe it was like autoimmune related, and they did give her IVIG, but that did not seem to correct the problem. And she did go to a major like research hospital, and they did an extensive workup on her, and they were not able to determine the cause of her symptoms. And the UDN also did some specific testing on her. And she spent the remainder of her life, which was a year and a half after she stopped walking, in a nursing facility because she was 100% dependent upon care.
Mhm. So when did her symptoms start?
So that would have been July of 2023. She really had no symptoms except all of a sudden just lost the ability to walk.
Oh, do they know what type of dementia it was?
No. They just knew that it was, she was fine and with it, and then all
Right.
of a sudden went down. Um, so I can talk a little bit about what happened after she died if you would like the
Sure.
autopsy.
Okay.
Um, so because and I think this is the thing that's really hard about living undiagnosed. I
Mhm.
know so many other undiagnosed patients and family members who have lost someone who has an undiagnosed condition and have had to make this decision to do an autopsy on their loved one.
Mhm.
And this decision was made in the hopes of getting an answer for what happened to my mom, but also potentially a diagnosis for me and my daughter.
Mhm.
Because, my mom and I had overlapping symptoms. My daughter and I have overlapping symptoms. It seems pretty good chance that it's all related, right? There can't be
Mhm.
three undiagnosed people in the same family. Um,
You'd be
and so,
surprised. I've
I
actually
know.
seen I actually have seen that.
So the hope was that we would find out what happened to my mom and then potentially a diagnosis for me and my daughter. And so the autopsy mainly focused on her brain and her spinal cord. And they did some other organs, and really the only finding that they found was that my mom had a huge lesion in her cervical spinal cord, which explains why she suddenly lost the ability to walk and had ataxia. But there was a lot of questions about this lesion because this lesion is seen in patients who typically have low B12 levels, and her B12 level was normal. The other question that was kind of raised was the dementia because her brain was also normal. And so there was a lot of, I feel like it was almost Pandora's box. Like there was more questions that came out of the autopsy than answers. I mean, I at least know why she lost the ability to walk, but I still don't know what it is that she has and why it happened to her.
Mhm. So looking back now, do you see similarities across generations?
Yeah, so like my mom has she had a movement disorder, ataxia, and I also have a movement disorder, but it's dystonia
Mhm.
in my foot. And um my daughter and I share symptoms. Like she has a slow transit constipation like me, and also a neurogenic bladder. And she's had extensive workup with specialists and also with the UDN. And there's no known cause of why she would have, for example, a neurogenic bladder, except the fact that her mom has one.
Mhm.
Um,
So
yeah.
when did these symptoms start with your daughter?
So my daughter's symptoms appeared when she was about 3 years old, because that's when she was, being toilet trained.
Mhm.
And I noticed that she really wouldn't recognize the urge to go to the bathroom until it was like time to go to the bathroom.
Mhm.
And that's often like how it is for me. Um, and, you know, I think she was having issues getting toilet trained until maybe she was about 6 or 7, um, because of this. But it was very clear to me what I was seeing in her was very similar to what I had seen in myself.
Mhm.
And that was absolutely devastating.
Mhm.
I mean, it felt like someone stabbed me in the heart. And, I wanted to bury my head in the sand, to be honest with you, and pretend this wasn't happening. But I knew that I had to help her. And, you know, that kind of began this search for answers, and eventually led us to the UDN. Um,
Mhm. So when did your symptoms start?
So I had mild symptoms throughout my childhood. For
Mhm.
example, the urinary issues I had throughout childhood, like what I was describing in my daughter, um, also would have like almost kind of like urgency. I like in my high school years, I remember like I would go to the bathroom before I left the school, and it was like a 25-minute bus ride, and by the time I got home, I would have to like I felt like I was running into the house to go to the bathroom.
Mhm.
I also didn't sweat. Like I do sweat, but it's like it takes a lot for me to sweat, and usually when I sweat now, I know that that means I'm actually overheated. Um, and but growing up, I really didn't think that that was an issue. It was like, great, I can exercise and not have to take a shower. um you know and I
Yeah.
fainted once or twice during my childhood, but it was nothing like like notable. And then I did have some GI symptoms like in late high school that led into college, and that kind of like persisted. um and that was like one of the major issues that I had, was my GI symptoms, which eventually led to the diagnosis of gastroparesis. But then my symptoms progressed during pregnancy with my daughter, which does happen sometimes with these neurodegenerative diseases that pregnancy is stressful for your body,
Mhm.
right? And that's when I really started, like, that's when I developed the neurogenic bladder. That's when I started fainting regularly. The constipation became a lot worse. Um, and then after that, it's just more and more symptoms have developed.
Mhm. Has anything changed since your pregnancy?
You mean
Since
as
your daughter's born
symptoms?
now? Yeah,
Like better or worse, or
either.
I think my symptoms have definitely it's hard for me to say
Or
what was
any new
exact.
symptoms or anything that
Yes, I mean I definitely got new symptoms like after the pregnancy. That's when I developed the dystonia. Was several years after the pregnancy. The shortness of breath happened several years after pregnancy. And then also I started to have like tachycardia. That was after pregnancy. So yeah, there was a lot more symptoms, and the symptoms, the gastroparesis, and even the dysmotility kind of is all over my GI tract because I was diagnosed with dysphagia um, after my pregnancy. So, like, it
yeah.
didn't get better, unfortunately.
So yeah. Um, so do you monitor your blood pressure?
So I did initially, but I am on a lot of stuff to help raise my blood pressure. I'm on a medication, and then the fluids. I get a liter of fluids every day.
Mhm.
And my nurse does measure my blood pressure every week. And with my fluids, I'm like 94 over 50
Mhm.
something. So you can imagine what it's like
Yeah.
before, what it was like off of the medication, off of the fluids. I was like in the 80s.
Yeah. But
I
yeah.
I was gonna say one thing that's um weird or interesting is that I can have like rapid drops of blood pressure. Like I can be walking and then all of a sudden my blood pressure will bottom out and I'll faint.
Um, so yeah, just to an FYI, most people probably don't know this, but well, some do, but the blood pressure is a silent killer.
Yeah.
So it's um see, going back to your mother, if you could ask her one question, what would it be?
You mean about her disease?
Yeah.
Did you notice any symptoms before? Because my father had died, and
Mm-hmm.
when she got sick, it was kind of like that was one of the questions that I kind of like, and I did ask. She did like lose the ability to talk for quite some time, and then she regained it after like a month or so. And I did ask her, but with the dementia too, it was kind of am I getting a truthful, not truthful, but an accurate answer? Because it seemed to me that it just was shocking to me that you could have no symptoms and all of a sudden not walk. And so,
Yeah.
I even called her PCP when I was trying to figure out what was wrong with her, and said that she was fine.
Yeah.
So,
From what I've worked with, most of the dementia patients tend to live in the past.
yeah.
And so it's what did your symptoms when did your symptoms we went through that one. Okay. What let's see. What has been the biggest challenge in remaining undiagnosed?
Um, wow. That could be a whole separate podcast. I mean, I think probably the biggest challenge has been the mental health toll
Mhm.
because you know, I And to be honest with you, I thought maybe when I got accepted into the Undiagnosed Diseases Network that this would be like, would make things better. But it hasn't. Because I thought maybe like having, here's, the UDN is funded by the NIH, and here's a stamp, right, from the NIH
Mhm,
saying there's something wrong with me, that maybe I would have an easier time going to doctors, meaning that they would believe me.
mhm,
And instead, I've been told, I basically, in so many words, have been refused care almost. I had a doctor tell me that he was not comfortable with my diagnosis or lack of
mhm.
diagnosis. This was a message on my portal. That he was uncomfortable with my diagnosis, and that he would no longer see me because he's only taking patients that he could add to their care.
So yeah, one thing I'd mention there, you don't know when somebody's going to walk in with a rare disease.
Right.
So
But I
it's
mean, that didn't make me feel
yeah,
good. That
no,
didn't
it
give me
wouldn't.
hope, right?
Yeah,
That made
yeah,
me feel like I should just stop trying, right? Because managing my condition is a full-time job,
yeah.
right?
Find
So like
somebody else is basically
right.
the advice there. Yeah.
And
Um,
just because I don't have a diagnosis doesn't mean that I don't have symptoms.
right,
Symptoms that can be managed, symptoms that are common to other known diseases.
right. You always
So
have the option for a second opinion.
right. What? Obviously, I don't see him anymore.
Yeah.
But as being an advocate,
Hmm.
I wrote a letter to the CEO of that hospital system, which, by the way, was a research hospital system. So
Oh,
if he doesn't want to see me, then where am I supposed to go? Because it was a
yeah.
research hospital. Um, and, he did call me and apologize, the doctor. And they did help arrange for me to see a different specialist.
Hmm. Has there been have there been diagnoses that were considered as that have been considered and later ruled out?
Yes, mainly they've considered, well, actually two. And this one's just recent, but the first one for me was Shy-Drager syndrome, and a lot of my symptoms fit into that, but not all of them.
Hmm.
And so that one was ruled out. But then also the UDN was considering the possibility of a mitochondrial disease because that's maternally inherited. And so that was part of one of the reasons why we wanted to do an autopsy, because the real test for mitochondrial disease is a muscle biopsy.
Mm.
And they didn't want to do it onto me because I haven't had the best surgical history, as you can imagine, with all my comorbidities. So we were able to get genetic testing, my mom's like mitochondrial genetic testing on her muscle tissue, and it was confirmed that she did not have mitochondrial disease. So that has been ruled out for me and my family.
Hmm. So has there been how has the uncertainty affected your daily life?
I mean, it affects everything I do.
Hmm.
Um, and just to give you an example, like I don't know when I go out for my morning walk if I'm going to come home because I fainted, and I hit my head one time, and I actually had thunderclap headaches as a result of that. But when I leave my home or get up to do anything, like I don't know if I'm going to pass out. And then also I plan everything in advance. Like I already know what I'm cooking for Thanksgiving.
Hmm.
Um which may seem crazy, but like it's very important to me that my daughter has a as normal childhood as possible. And, God forbid if I'm hospitalized, like everything's been planned out and, my husband just has to cook the food. Um, and as you can imagine, traveling can be a nightmare. um, just with all the medical stuff, and there's definitely a lot of fear just because I'm in a different place, and if something happens to me, I don't know how good the medical care is. They don't have access to my history, which is extensive. So yeah, it affects every aspect of my life.
Mm-hmm. So when did you first realize that your daughter might be experiencing similar challenges?
I mean, that was when she was 3, when I first started to notice the symptoms. And then, but it was confirmed to me later when, so my daughter is on a constipation medication called Motegrity.
Mm-hmm.
It's not FDA approved for children. So her doctor would never, like, what I'm trying to say is that her doctor wouldn't normally prescribe this, right? That wouldn't be
Mm-hmm.
something in her wheelhouse. However, this medication has helped me tremendously with my constipation, and she was struggling a lot. And so I
Mm-hmm.
asked the doctor if we could try it, and it's helped her tremendously.
So she's taking
And
it off
then,
label.
yes, she's using off label. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing is the surgery. Like we both have a sacral neurostimulator to help empty your bladder bowels. That has helped me tremendously. Again, I asked the her doctor about doing that, and they do that in children, and that has helped her too. Like that's basically how she ended up getting toilet trained,
Mm-hmm.
is through the use of this neurostimulator. So that to me though was that like the two things that have worked really well for me have worked for her symptoms. Kind of was like I'm happy for her, but I'm also kind of sad because to me it's like kind of proof that she has the same thing as me, which
Mm-hmm.
obviously I don't want her to have that. And that's been really hard for me. Like I still struggle with like, a mother's guilt. I'm not saying this is rational in any way, but feeling like I gave this to her, and you know, it was so bizarre when my mom got sick because told her, I'm like, "Mom, you're undiagnosed." And she said to me, she goes to me, "I'm so sorry." And
Mm-hmm.
so it was like, I knew what she was feeling. Do you know what I mean? But it
Mm-hmm.
happened after the fact. It was so bizarre. But yeah, I mean, and also when she is having like her with her constipation, if she gets constipated and she's in pain and, very bloated and uncomfortable and distended, like my heart aches for her because I know what it feels like because I have the same symptoms. Do you know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
it aches in a different way because I know exactly how she's feeling.
Yeah. So, but it's not your fault.
I know it's not my
It's
fault, but
just,
just,
yeah,
like I said, it's not
yeah,
rational.
yeah,
But you can't help it feel that way about someone that
right.
you love,
And I do
that
hear
you
that
wish.
from a lot. I do hear that from a lot of parents, and you really need to know it's not your fault.
Yeah.
Uh, but
But there's a lot of,
um,
I just want to highlight that there's a lot of blessings, in this, and the fact that like I've walked this path before her. And so like, she didn't sit with her symptoms for as long as I did. Do you know what I mean? And,
yeah.
like I've done like the legwork, right? And figured out
Mhm.
what things worked. So there's a blessing in that. And also like her and I are very close and uniquely bonded because I understand her and she understands me.
Hmm.
And so, like, in that respect, like, I wouldn't change anything. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Because, it's brought us so close. And, you know, I just tell her that we're special. We're totally unique. We're unicorns.
Hmm. So, as both a member of a patient, as both a mother and a patient, how do you balance caring for her while searching for answers for yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely very difficult and it is extremely overwhelming at times. Right now her symptoms are pretty well managed, but it is overwhelming. The intensity of medical care in this household is severe.
Hmm.
I spend pretty much like every day talking to some type of medical provider, and that in itself has its own emotional toll on a person. Um, and it is very hard to try to balance my own physical needs while trying to make sure that she's cared for. One thing that I would say is that, when my daughter was younger, I could not physically care for her because she was not independent. And, I have a caregiver myself, as I mentioned, but we had to get a caregiver for her. So at one point, we had two caregivers in the house.
Hmm.
And, that takes a toll too on the family. That was hard for my husband to have two strangers in the house. Um, so.
So, okay, so on to the Undiagnosed Network here. How how did you become involved in the Undiagnosed Network Foundation?
So you can apply to be a peer member, and so I did. I think I should talk maybe a little bit about how we got in the UDN in the first
Hmm.
place, maybe.
Yeah.
So in 2021, my daughter was seeing a diagnostic pediatrician, right? Like, whose job is to try to diagnose the child. And, he did the workup, and we really didn't have any answers. And he basically said to me, you know, here's your choices. It's up to you whether you want to pursue this further, basically, or you can just leave it as it is and just manage her symptoms. But if you would like to pursue it further, there's this thing called the Undiagnosed Diseases Network. It's very hard to get into, but I can help you apply to the network. And so, I said, absolutely, I want to, try to figure out what's wrong with her. And so we applied and we were both accepted as participants in the fall of 2021 at CHOP, or Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, was our
Mhm.
clinic site.
So what does the peer program do?
So we develop educational resources for the undiagnosed community. We also participate in the steering committee meetings. We provide the participant voice within the UDN. Um, and the thing that I love about the UDN is that they really put the participants at the center,
Mhm.
and they value the participant voice. Like, we're allowed to go to the steering committee meetings, which is full of, the physicians and the scientists and the researchers, and they ask and value our voice. and I feel like that's made me a better and stronger advocate. Um, because I was so used to my voice being kind of almost diminished in the healthcare, setting.
Hmm.
Because a lot of times I was told that there was nothing wrong, or I can't help you, or various things. And so it really, participating with in the peer group has helped me be a better advocate, and also, has we do many things for the community to establish the sense of connection. I was in DC, lobbying for to create a national undiagnosed day, and to recognize April as Undiagnosed Diseases Month.
Hmm.
So various, we do it all.
Yeah.
um, you know, so.
I did notice there's a ribbon for it now. So,
Yes, yeah.
tell us about the Tell Me More lecture series.
Oh, yeah. So, those would be on various topics. Like, we could do like we did like mental health. Sometimes we would have researchers on there talking about maybe various different types of genetic testing, like such as like newer genetic testing, like long read sequencing, and how that's different from whole genome sequencing. But basically to provide educational information for the community.
Hmm. So, what was the most rewarding part of helping other undiagnosed families?
I I being an advocate fulfills my heart so much. Just knowing that I can help one person, like I always say, like when I do my events, my virtual events, if one person shows up to the event, like that's perfect. Like I mean, obviously I want more people to come, but as long as I help like one person, um, you know, that's why I'm here. That's why, I'm doing this, because it's not easy for me given my condition, but I really want to help this community because I just know how difficult it is to live with an undiagnosed ultra rare disease.
Hmm. So, your organization, Pennsylvania Rare Disease Day, you organize the Pennsylvania Rare Disease Day. What does the event mean to you?
Well, I love that event because I have some amazing speakers come on, but also it's to me it is an event that helps remove some of the isolation that comes with living with a rare disease, right? Everyone's
Mhm.
joined together to celebrate this day. And I love organizing it. I do it every year. And speaking of living in the unknown, I've already organized February 2027's Rare
Wow.
Disease Day and have almost all my speakers, because that's how important it is to me. And I want to make sure that it goes on. So, yeah, I just think it's great to get the community together. And, I usually do a fall event too, and they have various topics. The last one I did was on medical trauma, and that one had a very robust discussion, and which just made me so happy because I knew we were helping so many people, and this was a topic that people really felt connected to.
Hmm. How do advocacy and research how do advocacy and research complement one another?
So, I mean, I think that the patient, right, understands their body, like they're the expert in
Mhm.
their body. And so I think really, and I think the UDN really recognizes this, that especially when you're dealing with something that's novel or rare, that you really need like a collaboration between the patient and like the research team, um, because the patient knows their body and they have like the scientific knowledge. And, you're not going to get very far without either one of them. And so
Mhm.
they recognize that and, you know, encourage it.
Mhm. So, what changes would you like to see in healthcare for undiagnosed patients?
I think that as I said before, that like, just because a patient doesn't have a diagnosis doesn't mean that they do not deserve medical care,
Mhm.
and that they have symptoms that can be managed. I would also like, it's very difficult to get insurance coverage when you have an undiagnosed disease. Just to give you an example, I spend about $25,000 annually on medical expenses. And if I were not married, I would be in big trouble because my Social Security disability payment is $25,000 annually. I
Mhm.
would have nothing to live off of, or I would just have to, not have access to the treatments that I need. Many of the treatments are not covered by insurance. For example, my IV fluids.
Mhm.
Medicare does not cover that. And so I'm getting charity care through my infusion company. My oxygen machine, Medicare does not cover that. And I paid out of pocket for that. And that was about $4,000. So,
Mhm.
and, I'm just going to say this too, like to give you an idea of how, what it would be like trying to navigate our healthcare system. Our entire healthcare system revolves around a ICD-10 code, a diagnosis code.
Mhm.
So what do you do when you don't have one?
Good question.
Right.
So,
I'll tell you what my
especially
doctors have
since
done.
we, yeah.
My doctors
So,
have been very creative, right? Of
yeah,
utilizing other codes to try to get
yeah.
insurance coverage. It doesn't mean that it always works. Like I just said, for various things, I appealed my IV fluids with the administrative law judge. Um, and
Mhm.
I mean, it was overturned, but that was only for those claims. And so basically, because it's federal law, um, I would have to get to the fifth level of appeals if I would get there, right? Because an administrative law judge could always overturn it. But I would basically looking at appealing every single claim, which happens every 2 weeks.
Yeah, that's
Right.
a
And it
lot.
took me 8 months to get to the ALJ.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, the highest you can go would be Supreme Court.
right. Which is what it would need to happen, right? Because the
Yeah,
way it's written, I'm not a
yeah,
Medicare lawyer, but I just know
yeah,
that it has to be changed federally in order for my
mhm,
fluids to be covered.
yeah. So, what, see, what testing have you already, completed?
So we've had whole exome sequencing. We've had I'm assuming you're talking about genetic testing.
Yes.
Yeah. So we've had whole exome sequencing, whole genome sequencing. We've had long read sequencing, and I'm still waiting for the results for that. We've had our transcriptome sequenced, and we've had the mitochondrial DNA sequenced. So yeah, those are the sequencing that I've had.
Mhm. Um, you said with your mother, it had something to do with protein too. Do you test amino acids?
So it was just she had elevated protein in her CSF, which usually indicates some type of inflammation in the central nervous system. One of the things, though, they often see that in mitochondrial disease. So that was kind of like maybe she does have mitochondrial disease. But like I
Yeah.
said, the genetic testing at, post autopsy did not reveal that.
Hmm.
So there was never an explanation for why she had the elevated protein in her CSF.
So, what specialists are you hoping to connect with?
I think I have struggled to find a patient, specialist that specializes in dysautonomia,
Hmm.
because that's kind of like the overlapping, like that covers a lot of my symptoms. Um, and the feigning obviously is like a huge issue, especially safety issue. Um, but also some other mechanisms have been proposed for my like symptom presentation, and one of them is like a channelopathy. So maybe someone who specializes in that, just to maybe rule it out.
Hmm.
As a possibility. But I definitely would love to connect with someone who specializes in dysautonomia. I've yet to find someone um, who really does.
Hmm. Are there particular symptoms or patterns you'd especially like researchers to hear about?
Well, I think the feigning, how I just have rapid drops of blood pressure, like that's very unusual. Like, you know, a lot of times you have some kind of like pre-syncope, like symptoms.
Hmm.
But like I could just be walking and then all of a sudden go down. Um, so, you know, I think the other thing is that um I do, I because I have my medical knowledge, I often think about like there's something going on with my smooth muscle tissue.
Hmm.
Because like, my bladder, that's smooth muscle, like my entire GI tract, and also my shortness of breath. I actually had like really bad allergies and I couldn't breathe. And the doctor prescribed an albuterol inhaler for me. And it really made a difference on my symptoms. And so now I just take it, now I get prescribed it for my shortness of breath. But that acts on the smooth muscle in your bronchioles. Do you know what I mean? So it's
Hmm.
like there's something going on with my smooth muscle tissue. Um, but I don't know how to put all these pieces together.
Yeah.
um, so
So, if someone watching has a possible lead, what kind of information would be most helpful?
I think if they, you know, had a pathway or a possible gene that they think could be possibly causing um, my condition, that would be most helpful.
Hmm.
I'm looking for that gene.
Right.
You know, I think though, given the fact that we've had an extensive workup, there's always the possibility that it could be more than one gene that's contributing to the phenotype,
Okay.
which then
Would
complicates
mhm.
things.
So, right now, so I'm going to move on to the next part here. What gives you hope today?
Well, as a former scientist myself, I know that science is always advancing. So that gives me hope that someday that we will have a diagnosis. I've certainly met people within the Undiagnosed Diseases Network who were in the network for 10, 15 years and finally got a diagnosis. And
Hmm.
so that gives me hope that maybe someday we will also have a diagnosis. We also, like as a peer member, we get emails from the UDN and like quarterly reports. And in that, they list the diagnoses that were made. And, there's quite a bit that
Hmm.
are made quarterly. And so that also gives me hope. Um, and also, as a peer member and participating in these steering committee meetings, these physicians and scientists and researchers, they really care about the undiagnosed patient community, and they're
Right.
very dedicated. And that gives me hope. Like someone, because I think for the longest time, I was going to doctor, and, no one was really kind of asking the questions like, well, why are you like this? You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And I remember just kind of feeling like, doesn't anyone care what's wrong with me? And then when we got in the UDN, it's like, yeah, someone does care, and they
Mhm.
care a lot.
Yeah. I think it's a lot of not knowing the questions to ask, and people tend to point the finger or blame people when that happens. Um,
Yes. But that
yeah, it
takes a
doesn't
huge
help.
mental toll
Yeah,
on the
it
patient
does.
themselves.
Yeah,
I felt like I spent a lot of time trying to convince doctors that I was sick, like there was something wrong, because they didn't believe me, when I didn't even want to
yeah,
be sick myself.
yeah.
So I mean, the mental health toll is, you know, astronomical.
Definitely,
um, you
I'd agree
know,
with you there. Um, what advice would you give to another family beginning the undiagnosed journey?
well, I mean, I would definitely tell them to get genetic testing as a start. Just because the reason why I'm saying this is because you would think with my long diagnostic odyssey that someone would have done genetic testing on me, um, but no one did. I never
Mhm,
had genetic testing until my daughter, when she was having her symptoms, and then we did what is known as a trio. So it was me, my husband, and my daughter. And we did whole exome sequencing, and that was the first time I had genetic testing, which to me I think is
yeah,
shocking, given the number of specialists at the time that I was going to, um, and my symptoms, that no one seemed to think that there was a genetic cause. And even after my daughter started exhibiting symptoms, none of my doctors referred me to a geneticist.
mhm. Christine, thank you for sharing your story and for allowing our community to be part of our ongoing journey. Um, I'd like to thank everyone who has joined us live today, and whether you asked questions, shared a research paper, suggested a patient registry, or simply listened to help, listened, helped, or helped build the kind of community that makes rare disease advocacy possible. Um, um, so powerful. If you know of a clinician, if you know of a clinician, researcher, patient organization, or another family who may benefit from this conversation, please share this episode. Together, we can help shorten the diagnostic journey for families searching for answers. My next episode will be with Heather, the main representative of the National Organization for Rare Diseases. Currently, the Miss America, Miss Maine for America 2026, and then she's also um, been running for. She'll also be running for Miss America in August, and we'll be discussing narcolepsy. Until next time, this is Joanna with Rare Connection, reminding you that every rare story matters. Every rare connection counts, and together we can build hope, uh, um, one conversation at a time. Thanks.
Okay.
So, see, you. So it try and keep on your time constraint here. You said that you had to. So yeah, I would invite the audience to participate, but right now I'm not seeing any comments. I don't know if there's anybody watching. Involved in Rare Connection